So, hello, welcome back to Voices in Health and Wellness, the show where we sit down with pioneering clinic owners, practitioners, and innovators shaping the future of patient care. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Greenland, and today I'm joined by Nico Seedsman, founder of Odin Stem Cells, a leading edge regenerative medicine clinic redefining how we approach healing and recovery. Nico blends a unique blend of clinical rigor and entrepreneurial drive to a field that's often more hype than substance. At Odin, he and his team are working to make stem cell therapies more accessible, effective, and evidence-based, while navigating one of the most rapidly evolving landscapes in healthcare. So thank you very much for joining us, Nico. Perhaps we could start, first of all, actually, where are you calling from, just for the benefit of our audience?
I'm in Paris today for one more day here.
Wonderful. So perhaps you could just tell us a little about how you got into this space and what your role is at Odin.
Yeah, so I served in the military 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
I did 3 years in the Navy originally in electrical engineering, and then I switched over to the Army and joined the SAS for 8.5 years. And during, for anyone who's aware of the military, it was a pretty demanding job to say the least. And I ran myself completely into the ground doing my duty. And that includes physical injuries, so broken right leg, foot, ankle, both knees had worn through, left inguinal hernia, significant lower back damage, significant neck damage. Both my shoulders had worn through. I had tinnitus, hearing loss, all the symptoms that come with having chronic fatigue, and then getting fibromyalgia. And then from fibromyalgia, I went to major anxiety, then major depression, and then full-blown PTSD. And then eventually I got all the way to completely autoimmune. I picked up multiple viruses in the jungle at this time that were active. The specialist had named, I still had active in my body, the whole Epstein-Barr, Ross River fever, dengue fever, and a bunch of others. He said we actually have names for them. I don't know where he got them, but they're all active. I'm riddled with parasites from my body. You can see them around my eyes. My nervous system had shut down. My nervous system had shut down. It was twitching. I couldn't keep my eyes open naturally. And it all came to a head with autoimmune, where I just went full autoimmune. I just was no longer healing. It was just permanently sick. And you could see it was getting pretty dark. And one of the doctors let loose that I was on my edge. I think they weren't supposed to say that they were to basically tell me that you've only got to, basically indirectly told me you've got a couple of months left to live at sort of best here. And I think they were maybe doing me a favor, but it definitely was a struggle. So I got close to death, and I'd serendipitously heard several podcasts talking about stem cells. And then I met, more serendipitously, the owner of a clinic in Colombia. And he got me in, very expensive. This was in 2019 to do stem cells. And immediately, they said, look, your health is so compromised that we can't actually give you the full dosage in one hit. We actually have to do it every 3 months to capitalize on success, but we don't want your body to think it can do things it can't do. So they staged it in tranches every 3 months. And I went in for my first, and nothing changed. Now the technology's better. You'll start to get some results due to exosomes. We can talk about that a bit later. Start getting results earlier. But with the stem cells I was doing, I wasn't expecting to get any real noticeable difference for 3 months at least. So I took it, and then I kept getting worse. Things were pretty dire. And then on the 3-month mark, right on the nose, I just started feeling better. It started stabilizing. And then I did stabilize. And then I got to the point where I had completely stabilized and got to my second treatment, and then got to my third. And I was just hoping not to die. But after about 6 months, I was at about 40%. And say after a year, I was at about 70% of my general health back again. And I'm talking, I was below 5. Like if it was a telephone battery, it was definitely in the red. And eventually, after that period, over the next, let's say from day one, it was probably about a year and a half. I got close to 100%, got pretty close. And the crazy thing that happened was my knees regenerated too. And I only took IVs and I did intrathecal, and my shoulders regenerated, and my back and neck issues and my hearing and all these things started coming back. So when I was done, and this was the real test was when I got COVID, because before I would have definitely been the person that was in hospital and probably for sure dead. But I got COVID. This all happened just before it. And when I got it, I'm like, well, good luck. Let's see how this goes. And I did it, and still alive to tell the tale. So after this, I said, all right, well, veterans don't have access to this, and this is pretty bullshit, because it is quite it's quite sad when you see how veterans are taken care of. So I created a foundation. I spoke in front of rooms of billionaires, and I could get everyone to cry essentially, and just telling the journey. And they didn't. I couldn't get donations out of them. It was very hard. They didn't understand the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the problem. Education, awareness. So I kept trying to find different angles to do things and to help. And then I just settled into just raising awareness as much as I could, because I'm like, right, we're going to start with a bit of an education. And eventually one of my best mates, tech founder, did it. And at my advice, and went to the clinic I recommended, and he got a successful treatment of his knees and his wrist, and he could play tennis again. He'd lost the ability to play tennis. And he's like walking up a hill with me in Patagonia. It was like, oh, wow. He's like, so I did this and this. And, what if I want to start a stem cell company? What if I want you with me? You're the face, the brand, and you run it. And I'm like, okay, let me think on this. And I did. I thought on it for a while, and I came back after a couple of weeks and said, all right, let's do it on the provision that veterans get help. Because my end goal is actually to get this into Veterans Affairs and the serving military across Five Eyes, starting in the United States, because everyone else follows them. And I knew the best way to do this at this point was to treat everyone, treat civilians, create a business, make it successful brand name until the toothpaste is so far out of the tube that you can't put it back in. Mm-hmm. And that is essentially where it started, and now it's grown significantly from there. Wow.
So where are we now with Odin then?
So now, pending a few changes, I'm a very, as you can imagine, I'm a rather focused, controlled aggression would be the military term, driven person with command and the direction that I am heading with the company. And essentially what we're doing is we're building out the entire ecosystem to fulfill the desires of every patient. And the center of that is having a team that are all integrity based, right? And that there has been key, right? Now, what we found with the doctors and clinics are really good. They're really good at doing what they're doing and what they learned to do in their schooling. And that's great. We don't need to reinvent the wheel there. But what they were having problems with is getting the education out there and finding applicable patients that are correct for it, and going through the process to get them aligned to come to their clinic. So we took over that. Now we're successfully doing that across the United States, and we should have the framework very soon with a partnership to be able to do it for the most part in home in most of America, if they don't, low level injections and IVs. And therefore that'll make access to it much easier. Like, it's one thing to try to have someone find a way to finance this themselves, and we'll get to that in a second. It's a struggle there. However, it's a bigger struggle for them to then go, hey, I've got to pay for this now. I've got to take a week off work and travel and pay for the travel expenses, and I'm losing money from traveling, and I'm also losing money from not working. So it increases. It's like insult to injury. So getting them done at their home soon enough will be the next thing. We're building out as part of our entire network. And then thirdly, as part of the brand awareness, we're also going to be finding ourselves basically providing consumer finance at an interest rate that's like fair and integrity based. I don't like in America that it's there's a lot of gouging on interest. I think it's absurd. And I also think people who regenerate more likely to pay back their debts. You know, it's really hard to get surgery 6 times and have a non-functioning shoulder at the end of it and still not be able to go back to the workshop or whatever that, you know, you're as a boilermaker or whatever it is. So you know, trying to provide this one-stop shop framework for all people to come to us. Whether you want treatment at home, we're also going to be looking at providing stem cells to the clinics as well, so, and education material to the doctors so they know what they're working with and how to use it. They know how to explain it to a patient of what they're actually going to be going through. So they're going to be having a very imminently, probably within this month, going to have the ability to provide that educational material and provide those cells and to the clinics and the doctors. And we're also going to be having the financing as well as, you know, this in-home treatment. Now, the center of gravity of when I built this company was what I wanted, because I put my family through this. I put myself through it. I put a lot of veterans through it, and veterans that I know and have served with. And really what I wanted to do was, I'm like, right, if this is me going through it, what did I care about? And it really came down to 3 things. It's having the most experienced doctors. That was a big thing to me, having the safest, most experienced doctors, because they did have a situation in Colombia when I did it in 2019 where it wasn't catastrophic, but it was definitely negligent, and I was left in a pretty bad way, in a bad condition, just alone. So safety, then efficacy. We have no loyalty to any laboratory. So if we find better cells, we will switch to those cells. And the patient will be notified. We're like, hey, this is the expense here, and the reason you're doing it is because have got the best cells. And it's like, you know, if you want less quality cells, and by all means go abroad where they've been replicated, or, you know, they'll be cheaper, but you're getting more compromised cells. And then cost. We're not that these guys in Latin America have. It's all coming to an end now with the legalization in the United States. The complete, basically what's coming to be a complete open legalization of every state. It is, you know, they've been gouging before for sure, and that didn't sit well with me when I saw the numbers, and I don't understand running medicine is you know, I'm the CEO, so I get it, but I believe there's a margin of integrity, and then there's a pretty obvious level of gouging, and so having these things and having all our team members orientated around the same level of integrity and wanting to change the world and regenerate and heal people like myself has been key to the development of our entire brand and enterprise.
Amazing. Amazing story. So what does a typical day look like for you at the clinic or behind the scenes? I'm not quite sure where you are. Obviously, you've got a lot of business development going on. You're developing an ecosystem. So I don't know how much you are in the sort of the business side of things or actually on the ground doing.
No, I generally don't get on the ground as such. I do occasionally, because there's clinics all over the US that work with us. So it's like, it's just too much to be, you can't be everywhere. I've really got to be just strapped into a computer somewhere from when everyone wakes up on the East Coast to the United States until whenever they're done with questions or don't have tasks or whatever for everyone. So it's pretty intense. But what I do like to do is I do like to jump on the phone at the lowest level with the potential patients that have requested to have a chat with someone who's been through it in similar conditions. And since I tick a lot of conditions, it's not a stretch for them to have a chat with me. And I really do like to have my finger on the pulse there, be able to see the pain in their eyes, and that, like, you know, whilst I've got to keep my language very strategic about what I say that stem cells can do and etc. We're under strict guidelines there, which should open up, you know, naturally over time. But in the meantime, you know, it's like, hey, you're going to have to read between the lines because we're under strict legal provisions here. Just give them a little bit of hope. You know, people just want some hope. Like they're struggling. The failed medical system has kind of left them for dead for a long period of time, and these new these new technologies, regenerative medicine that's coming through, and other forms of medicine, which you're hosting a bunch of them on your show. It is definitely very it's a promising time to be alive for hope. But the other side of this is the average person doesn't watch this kind of media, right, as much. It's not something they're just sort of leaning into. So it becomes, how do we educate people? How do we make it aware of this is available? How do we make them comfortable? How do we make them feel confident in it? How do we just give them some hope that life won't just be this suffering existence until death, which is where I was. I see the despair in them and I feel it. Um, and the doctors we have doing the treatments, we just select guys that have a great reputation for the way they interact with people and handle them and care about them and take care of them. And then all the members of the team between just, really do care. I've got one guy, our top advocate. He prays for every single member, every single person that goes through, every patient, praying for recovery every single day. He prays for them. He's very, you wouldn't know unless you asked him, but he's a very godly man, and he truly cares. And that's been the success at this point, is finding people who, doctors inclusive, truly, truly, really care.
Amazing. So you're in a fascinating niche. What major shifts are you seeing right now in this space, the regenerative medicine space? Because obviously it's fast paced, but what are you noticing?
I'm noticing more of a legal framework in the United States. Before it wasn't illegal, but it was in this like gray area of medicine in the US, where it was acceptable provided that the patient was notified. That's the parameters of experimental medicine. Now it's becoming illegal state by state, where it's like just full legality protected by the full scope of medicine. So that's happening. So that's become really interesting. Then the exosomes came out in the last probably about 3 years ago now, maybe three to four, and now that's become as part of a treatment. You just wouldn't do stem cells anymore without the exosomes. Exosomes are like saying the particle to the atom being the stem cells, and the exosomes being the particle, and they're able to pierce the blood-brain barrier. So you don't need to you do them together, and the exosomes will come in the billions, and they'll go to work immediately and aggressively, like from basically day one. And that, coupled with the stem cells, kind of allows this gradual incline of healing. And then when the stem cells catch up at about the 3 month mark, say 2 to 3, it then facilitates like this kind of exponential growth on their care, let's say care plan, their overall care. And that there has become one of the biggest successes. And then they've also, America making it illegal to use replicated cells has meant that there's been a better success rate and standard of treatment in the United States. And some laboratories, the one we work with, they have just they decided to stop this excessive profiteering, and be like, you know what, we're actually just going to offer a non-replicated, extremely large volumes of cells, so that people can get a full treatment that they would otherwise get in Latin America, but without replication. And every time you replicate, they get like bunched together, and they get and mutations and all these things. And you just know that if something's been replicated 3 times, yeah, it's okay. But beyond that, up to 27 times, some of the clinics do, you just know that it's like watering down the cell. So what's actually happened is it's created a higher concentration of cell and exosome, and definitely far more success with those two together. That's what's been the most exciting, especially I went to 2019, I had replicated cells, and I had them in, 6 years ago now, and the research and development, was just kind of where it was, so be it. And now if I was to go do that treatment, the success would be, I would say I would expect somewhere, like maybe 3 to 7x with the same amount of cells inclusive of exosomes. So that's exciting for me, right? Because we quantify our success as a company on people healed. We're just like, well, that's what internally, that's what excites us. It's like who met their primary goal, who met 100% of their top 3 goals, and that's how we quantify what we're doing works, and how we measure success.
Brilliant. So on that note, what's working really well for you in Odin right now? I guess your success rate is something which you're very proud of, but as a business, what are the things that work really well?
I would say, from a business perspective, because we're not this big entity, this corporate level entity, and I'm a very tactical person, like tactical leadership as well as strategical. I got this fine balance with the team where I'm able to empower them to make initiative-based decisions to move at the speed that we need to move to essentially become the biggest brand, ideally, in the stem cell market in the United States. We've had a very good head start at this. One of the partners is an extremely successful tech founder who's for marketing and markets all the biggest brands in the world, biggest corporations. He's really good at that, and the other partner is a doctor, and he's brought on a whole bunch of the expertise as it involves medical operations, but he's also extremely business savvy. And somehow the 3 of us have created this immensely successful model to be able to like just weave in and out of each other to go in these directions and divide and conquer. It allows us to be have complete confidence in them to do that, which really allows us to exponentially grow and outperform ourselves every month. So that's been a win for us, on a business level.
Great. And on the flip side, what's frustrating or harder than you expected as you kind of grow your operation?
It takes people longer to decide that they wish to proceed to get care, which means there's a lot of touch points, there's a lot of hand holding, there's a lot of extra education, and there's a lot of work involved for the advocates who basically hold their hand through the entire process and thereafter as well. So just check in with them and collect, just so we have some internal data on success, like collect their data and just how they're tracking. It's definitely requires more manpower there than you would ideally really want to manage, but it's what duty requires, right? It's truly, as I call it, to truly give an F, like legitimately about someone's outcome and their success, and then you can't water it down. And so it's been a bit more challenging and slower in that realm than you would otherwise want to.
What do you think's behind that? What's causing this sort of long decision-making process? What's the driver for that?
Education. It's really education. It's education and quite a large number that they've got to come up with, because it's not covered in any form. So they've got to work out how to get together the finances. That's a thing. But it also is like, okay, education. I need to make sure I understand exactly what I'm doing and where I'm committing these resources to in order to pursue this success, what their success looks like to them, and how that, the likelihood of that, their affordability, how much they can actually afford. One thing that we did was I didn't ever want to deny anyone the opportunity to get help. I found a lot of the Latin American clinics would be like, hey, here's your price. Good luck. Let us know if you can do it. But I wanted to present people with 3 plans. We now do up to 4, sometimes 5, depending on the person, so they can choose what they can afford to the degree of promising results, and that there, gives someone the opportunity to decide, what they can afford, and what's in their wheelhouse, and how do they want to dip their toes? Do they want to dive in? Can they afford to dive in? And it's usually a bit of a dance for these guys. So that there takes a little bit of time for them to really sit with. Like it probably would be easier if we just went, hey, here's the number, good luck. But I don't think it's fair. When you're playing with people who are just miserable in many ways. So that there has definitely been a factor to slow people down. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any specific metrics or outcomes that you track? I think you kind of implied that sort of client success stories was one, but are there any other things that you track from a clinical or operational perspective?
We definitely do. One of our big rounds of clients are diabetes. I won't share the information here because we're under some pretty strict legal provisions on that. But and then I talked to this, like we've got a handful of major lawyers in this field that we go to and drop whatever we have to make sure that we're compliant with everything, right? One of the other day was completely blown away because you're the first people I've ever actually heard of collecting data to help your patients and like to see what you can tweak to do it better and perform. They're like, no one else is there, just selling. So that actually felt good. So we're collecting a lot of data, especially on diabetes, and we correlate quite a lot of, I would definitely say, success on those. But we're not allowed to release that publicly. We can discuss it verbally with the patient on the phone. We're not allowed to write it down and send it to anyone. It's just, again, we've got some. The lawyers are like, we'll just keep you in very much safe zone, So we're like, okay, it is what it is. But it's like I do like to. The whole team likes to see that and hear that and feel that. They're a lot of the people have been let down by a medical system in many ways, and it's not all. It's just we're dealing with America as well, which often is like there can be a very blurry line between business and medicine in America. Very blurry, and they've just felt let down in many ways with the system. So they're more motivated than ever by actually helping people and less by money, which is good. So them being able to see the data as well internally is a huge motivator for the team.
Brilliant. So looking ahead, where do you want to see Odin in the next sort of 6 to 12 months? I know you're talking about developing your ecosystem, but where do we see this going?
The ecosystem, I basically want it to be a one-stop shop. You come to Odin, whether you're a patient, whether you need finance for regenerative medicine, whether you're a clinic and you want to start treating stem cells inside your clinic, and providing that as an option to your patients. And that's it. That's what I said. I want us to be the brand that you can come to and know these guys have done all the filtering and what we say we mean, and that we're integrity based, and we'll do everything in our power to help. And that's who we are as a brand, and what we want to become. We want us to become that name that you can just come to for stem cells, whatever the problem be.
And if you could wave a magic wand and solve one major challenge that you're dealing with today, what would that be?
Speed. I'm not a person who likes to slow, smooth this fast, but I'm not a person who likes to sit on things too long, in the sense that there has to be a decision made and we have to move forward, and I do that, but I can't compel the third parties to do that as fast as I like to move. I've got my SAS speed that and don't get me wrong, I taper it because I'm working with civilians now, but I would I wish I could crack that wand out and just and expedite things faster with all parties involved.
Got it. Nico, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This has been a really interesting conversation. It's interesting how many people I'm speaking to that's started with a personal journey that's created something really special. And I think you've done that with your organization and what you're achieving, what your ethos is. Really interesting to hear about it and where this is going. So again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You're so welcome, Andrew. Thanks, man.
Thank you.